Welcome to the Bible in a Year with Life Through Grace. I am your host, Rachel, and I'm so happy that you're joining me on this journey of a Bible in a Year. Hello, and welcome back to a new episode. We will be reading from the book of Genesis, chapters 37 and 38. We are nearing the end of the book of Genesis. We only have 3 more days left, including today. So we're about to wrap up our second book since we took a pause and read the book of Job. Now we're finishing the book of Genesis. So as a quick recap, Genesis has been full of a lot of important stories. We read through the creation of earth, the creation of humankind, the fall of humankind. We read through the flood, and then that led us into meeting Abraham. We've learned about the covenant that God did with Abraham. He promised to multiply him and his descendants so much that it would never be able to be numbered or counted. That's how much his blessings and his offspring would be. So we read through him and his wife Sarah, then their child Isaac. We read through Isaac and Rebekah, and then their child Jacob. We read through Jacob and Rachel, and now we're going to be talking about their child Joseph. So let's get right into it. The book of Genesis, chapter 37. Joseph's dreams. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. These are the family records of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended sheep with his brothers. The young man was working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age, and he made a long-sleeved robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. Then Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. There we were, binding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly my sheaf stood up, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. Are you really going to reign over us?" His brothers asked him. "Are you really going to rule us?" So they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Look," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He told his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him. "What kind of dream is this that you have had?" he said. "Am I and your mother and your brothers really going to come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Joseph sold into slavery. His brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers, are pasturing the flocks at Shechem. Get ready, I'm sending you to them." "I'm ready," Joseph replied. Then Israel said to him, "Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are doing, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the Hebron Valley, and he went to Shechem. A man found him there, wandering in the field, and asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph said. "Can you tell me where they are pasturing their flocks?" "They've moved on from here," the man said. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph set out after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him in the distance, and before he had reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Oh, look, here comes that dream expert. So now, come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal ate him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let's not take his life." Reuben also said to them, "Don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him," intending to rescue him from them and return him to his father. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off Joseph's robe, the long-sleeved robe that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty, without water. They sat down to eat a meal, and when they looked up, there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying aromatic gum, balsam, and resin, going down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers agreed. When Midianite traders passed by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone. What am I to do?" So they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the robe in his blood. They sent the long-sleeved robe to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it. Is it your son's robe or not?" His father recognized it. "It's my son's robe," he said. "A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth around his waist and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." And his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guards. Judah and Tamar. At that time, Judah left his brothers and settled near an Adamite named Hira. There, Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua. He took her as a wife and slept with her. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and he named him She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and named him Onan. She gave birth to another son, and named him Shelah. It was at Chizib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Now Judah's firstborn, was evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Sleep with your brother's wife. Perform your duty as her brother-in-law and produce offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he released his semen on the ground so that he would not produce offspring for his brother. What he did was evil in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought, he might die too, like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had finished mourning, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's clothes, veiled her face, covered herself, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that, though Shelah had grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her and said, "Come, let me sleep with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me for sleeping with me?" "I will send you a young goat from my flock," he replied. But she said, "Only if you leave something with me until you send it." "What should I give you?" he asked. She answered, "Your signet ring, your cord, and the staff in your hand." So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. She got up and left, then removed her veil and put her widow's clothes back on. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite in order to get back the items he had left with the woman, he could not find her. He asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim?" "There has been no cult prostitute here," they answered. So the Adullamite returned to Judah, saying, "I couldn't find her. And besides, the men of the place said, 'There has been no cult prostitute here.'" Judah replied, "Let her keep the items for herself, otherwise we will become a laughing stock. After all, I did send this young goat, but you couldn't find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has been acting like a prostitute, and now she is pregnant." "Bring her out," Judah said, "and let her be burned to death." As she was being brought out, she sent her father-in-law this message: "I am pregnant by the man to whom these items belong." And she added, "Examine them. Whose signet ring, cord, and staff are these?" Judah recognized them and said, "She is more in the right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her intimately again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife took it and tied a scarlet thread around it, announcing, "This one came out first." But then he pulled his hand back. Out came his brother, and she said, "What a breakout you have made for yourself." So he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread tied to his hand, came out, and he was named Zerah. Dear God, thank you so much for another moment in your word. Thank you for reminding us that we are not the only people that make mistakes. Thank you for reminding us that even those that you have chosen to carry out your will aren't necessarily perfect either. We recognize the pattern of you using random, rejected, seemingly insignificant people to be the main characters in these stories that shape what we now learn and what we now read to get closer to you and to learn more about you. Because ultimately, our time in the Bible is so that we can get to know you more and so that we can draw nearer to you. So thank you that we are reading stories from people who are just as broken as us, from people who may sometimes be just as lost or confused as we have been. Thank you for showing us that you are with them, because it helps us understand and feel that you are with us. I pray all this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. Wow. Okay, so let's get into what we just read. We started off with learning about the 12 sons, well, 12 of the sons that Jacob had with his wives. As we mentioned in the previous episode, these are later going to be the 12 tribes of Israel. So these brothers are going to be used in a major, major way. But as we read, we can see that they're not perfect people. They're not exactly the kindest. They struggle with jealousy. They struggle with ego. And yet God is still going to use them in a major way. But before we get into that, that's going to come up in later episodes. But today, hearing this story about Joseph, there's a lot of things that I feel like I can take out of this and apply it to my own life. So first thing that stands out to me is having to be careful and have discernment on who we share intimate details with. So we saw that Joseph went to his brothers every time he had a dream and he told them about his dream. Now, the act of doing this doesn't make the dream less possible of happening, because eventually we will see that they do happen. However, having discernment on who to share these important details or experiences with is important, because not just anyone is capable of understanding or of holding the significance of what that is. We see his brothers mock him and laugh at him. We even see his father do it too. Even knowing how much his father favors him over all of his brothers, we still see that he doesn't believe him either. And he gets kind of annoyed and frustrated with him for even saying it. So for me, it reminds me to just be smart on who I share these things to, because I don't want to have to struggle with any negativity that can be coming towards me because of it, because it can discourage you. It can make you doubt yourself, or it can make you doubt, the experience or the calling that God is giving you. And it shows you that even your own family can possibly be those people who won't be able to speak life into the dreams that God is giving you. But regardless of that, we see that if you are surrendered to God and you're righteous before God, regardless of the negativity and the discouragement that you may get, what's God's will is God's will, and what's God's will come to pass. So there is hope in that. There is hope in knowing that if we remain obedient and close to God, that no matter what comes our way, whatever people say or don't say, is not going to affect us obtaining or accomplishing the dream that God gives us. And that to me is just very important, because that can be applied to absolutely anything in your life. So for example, if you have a relationship with someone that you're growing, a romantic one, an emotional one, there may be people who are clouded with jealousy or anger towards you having this relationship. So when you speak to them about it, what they do is they bring you down, or they plant seeds of doubt in your mind rather than speaking life into your situation and your experience with this new relationship. It's tricky because it doesn't mean that everybody should agree with you or enable everything that you think that you should be doing. But that goes with discerning the people that you should trust. And the people that you should trust should be people that are always going to be honest with you, but not based on their personal feelings or their personal opinions, but rather rooted in the word or rooted in the spirit, people who will speak life or truth into you. And that ends up feeling like conviction if it's something against what you're doing, not shame, not guilt, not disgust. It'll feel more like conviction, more of like an understanding or an awareness that you probably hadn't seen before. And so that's a truth that is actually speaking life into you, because it's guiding you and redirecting you in the right direction. Or if they are in agreement with your situation or with what you're sharing with them, then that would feel like peace. It'll feel like an affirmation from God. And so just being in prayer about the relationships that you're fostering, the people that you are bringing near into your life and near to your heart and your mind and your thoughts and your emotions, being in prayer for them is important for you, because we don't want to be talked out of God's promise for us. But sometimes God's promise is just so big and so unbelievable sometimes. Like, it can be something that it just doesn't seem possible, just like Joseph's dreams. They're like, do you really think that we're going to bow down to you? Are you crazy? And Joseph in the moment probably could have been like, yeah, it does sound really crazy. We don't know. It doesn't really clarify how Joseph felt or thought about these dreams, but we see the reaction of those around him and they're like, absolutely not going to happen. And yet later we'll see that it does happen. And so just like us in our lives, God can give us a dream that it seems so improbable. It seems so far away. It seems so impossible. But that's the thing about God. He is the God of the impossible. We can do all things through him. And so that is a promise that we should hold on to. And that's the promise that people should be feeding into our lives and encouraging us with and directing us to. So we see that Joseph ends up getting sold as a slave by his own brothers, and he ends up in the land of Egypt. Then in chapter 38, we're jumping over to see what is going on with Judah and Tamar. So we'll be back with Joseph tomorrow, but we did conclude on chapter 38 today, which is about Judah and Tamar. So Judah is one of Joseph's brothers, another one of Jacob's sons. And we read this very interesting story of how Tamar tricked him. We see a recurrence again of a woman who is desperate to be loved or to feel useful, to feel like she's a woman, because back in the day, that is what you were made to do. If you were a woman, you were supposed to be having children. And so here she is, probably, several decades old. She's had husbands die on her. She hasn't been able to conceive. And the man that she's supposed to be waiting for to get married to again doesn't seem like is actually going to marry her. So she's desperate, and she takes matters into her own hands by pretending to be a prostitute and tricking her father-in-law into sleeping with her. So at first, when he finds out that his initial reaction is, okay, she must die. Like, how dare she sleep with someone when she's supposed to be getting married to my son eventually? And it's funny that that's his reaction, because he himself knows, we read it earlier in the text, that he wasn't going to give a third son of his to her because he was afraid that he was going to die as well. And yet he still gets angry until he finds out that he's the father. And at that point, he's like, okay, she has a point then. She is in the right because I haven't given her the son that I promised her. And as we know, twins run in this family. Just like Jacob and Esau were twins, now Tamar is having twins from Judah. And we have this interesting birth story of them not really knowing who is the firstborn. And yeah, like I said, tomorrow we're going to be jumping back into Joseph's story. All 3 chapters that we'll be reading will be following him and his life in Egypt, where he ends up from being a slave, and different events that take place with him and the Pharaoh. We're going to be learning a lot more about his dreams. So if you're interested in finding out what we're going to be reading next and what is coming up, you can download the reading plan that is in our podcast landing page. So you can find that link in Instagram at Life Through Grace. It's in our bio, and you'll be able to see what we're going to be reading during the next couple months. Thank you so much for being here. You should be so proud of yourself for being so close to being 1 month in. Whether or not you are keeping up with this podcast to the date that we're releasing them, or if you are listening to them on your own pace, being this far in, we're almost done with Genesis and we already finished Job. It's a great thing. So props to you. Proud of you. God is proud of you. And as always, like I like to remind you guys, please pray for me. Please pray for me. I am praying for you. Pray for each other. I know you guys don't know each other, but we're all brothers and sisters in Christ if we're all listening to this together, honestly. So pray for each other, and I will see you guys tomorrow.